And Steve Baker, your presenter today for visual authoring, he's going to share with you tools to make your presentations training rock. And I remember getting you on the schedule and teaching a video course at a site conference, and it was a huge hit. And raise your hand if you were in his session several years ago. Steve, where was that? Where were we? Where you presented that?
That was in Austin.
Austin, Texas. Raise your hand if you were in Austin, Texas. I know Brenda was. Anyone else? Doug, all right. Yeah, so hopefully Jamie, okay, great. Jamie was in Texas, and Paul. Awesome. So that was a great session, and we are so excited that Steve is here today to share his expertise. So Steve, take it away.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm glad to be here. I told Sandy if it wasn't Sandy who asked me, I probably wouldn't be here today. I've had a lot of different challenges in work and personal life, but I am here because she is such a wonderful person. I could not say no. So good news, we're going to have some fun today.
Yay!
So there you go. All right. So who is this session for today? Well, it's for learning professionals who are technology shy or are afraid to use newer approaches they fear are beyond them. Or it's for folks looking for a distraction before taking off for the Thanksgiving holiday. Maybe that's some of you. Or third, it's for people who think that bullets are boring. All right. Hopefully you're one of those. You know, they always talk about people who are for training. They're either captive, they're captives, they're there to learn, or they're there for vacation. So hopefully you're here to learn something today and good. So let's take a different approach. Who is this for? And you notice right now I have a visual on the screen. And I think this is a first example. I decided today there was a lot of stuff I could do, real high technical stuff, and I thought, you know, that's just not going to go over real well. I need something that people can access, something they can do today. So sometimes it's as simple as getting a couple of good images like this. I think this shows a nice mental picture of how maybe you feel personally when it comes to some of this stuff if you've designed or worked with PowerPoint. So this is a Shutterstock photo that I have in my personal collection. And so I thought it summarized pretty well what today might be about. And it's just more interesting than text, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Sandy made mention of the fact that the site conference in Austin, I presented a session on high-impact videos in a low-cost world. And sometime after this, we'll do a follow-up. I'll give you a link. I did get this video posted on YouTube if you'd like to see it. So, you know, one of the things I've learned over the last few years is just any opportunity you can to videotape something, capture it. You just never know when you're going to reuse it. So this is a perfect example, dusting it off, taking it out of mothballs and approach it. But one of the things that the reason I use that last image, I'm using this image right now, that I did in that session was if you're presenting live, you know, a lot of us were used to, if you've been using PowerPoint for 20 years, you know, lots of bullets, lots of information, and it just puts people to sleep. And when I first prepared for this true confession here, I had spent a couple of weeks putting all this stuff together for this presentation, and I showed it to a few of my coworkers about the day and a half before the workshop and the conference. And they looked at me and they like, they didn't know how to say, they're like, Steve, that's really boring. I know you want to say all this stuff, but you're just sharing too much. Why don't you just do what we do and make it simple? And so I really learned that just if you can have some really good images that you can use to show and to present and talk about. One, you don't have to try to read slides, which is terrible. Two, nobody knows if you made a mistake or you didn't share something you intended to share. And it tends to have more of a visual impact for folks. And so, you know, it's funny if you're in the workplace for a long time, you'll learn certain ways to do it. Like, you know, you learn the hard way and, you know, how to write books or how to make videos or how to do, you know, audio. And there's so many cool new tools out there that it's so much easier. I'm thankful for younger coworkers who've just kind of taught me to think of things in much simpler ways. So I'll make sure we get you a link for that. But just one of the things that was in that video, and I think it ties back into the theme for today, is when I was trying to get people in Allstate and my team to start to shoot and use video, they were all nervous. They're like, oh, I can't do that. It's technical. Oh. So I thought about it for a long time, and I came up with the concept of we're going to have a bad video contest. And the goal is you got to make a bad video that's only 3 minutes long. And I never forget my director at the time. She said, well, shoot, I can do that. And I said, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. And so it was just a fun way to get people in our teams to start to use video as one of those means to punch up and enhance presentations by doing that. Now the funny part was, once the pressure was off and their goal was to create a bad video, it was amazing some of the videos that people created. In fact, an entire team out in Roanoke, Virginia recreated Thriller. They dressed up, they did multiple shots. It was amazing. Now, we had to take it off of YouTube right away because I had to remind them that is copyrighted materials and you can't use the soundtrack, but they got #1. So just to say, you know what, try these things. So we're going to start out really simple and small today. So Sandy approached me a couple of months ago and said, Steve, I want you to do something on authoring. We kind of brainstormed, came up with visual authoring, and I came up with this really, like, this is a good marketing blurb. I hope I deliver this today. I'm not really sure whether we'll get to everything. That's funny because I was thinking about how many tools? 7 tools. That sounds like a good number. Yeah, 7 tools that'll rock. So I started thinking about it. So first off, you know, people have to have an agenda, right? How many people, when you present or have training, have an agenda that looks like that?
Mm-hmm.
Now maybe you're like, okay, so I read somewhere I should use complementary colors, and I think that's one of the template options in PowerPoint. So you got real fancy and said, ooh, I got the blue agenda, and now I've got the orange text bullets. All right. So for me, some of the things I'm experimenting with, that's pretty boring. In fact, it's amazing. If you look at how much messaging we get, how many things we see, commercials. Part of the problem is we get saturated, and so when I look at a slide like this, my brain goes to sleep. So I've been experimenting and said, okay, well, let's at least get a handwritten font that looks a little bit better. You know, it's a little bit more natural. It's different than what I'm seeing from looking at something like this. But then I thought, well, all right, but even if you say have PowerPoint, go into PowerPoint. Pick one of these smart graphics. You know, and Shazam, you know, put something in there that makes it a little more visually engaging. So this is something that anybody can do. You click on a template, type in the words, put it in your slide, just as a way to make this a little more visually interesting to folks. So again, we're starting out real simple and small. I'm assuming many people on the call have done this. No big surprise here. But for some of you, maybe you never have. I'll be honest with you, it's the first time I actually used one of those smart templates. I used to create this stuff by hand, and I thought, wait a minute, I'm starting to see some really cool templates in here. I should use these things. So just true confession, it's the first time I used that. Now, I put my own little touch on it, so the little toolbox, the cone, and the little mind map or the process map, I superimposed on there. So that was my little touch. So something as simple as that. Or if I'm a big avid mind mapper, so I've been using mind mapping software for about 15 years. And what I really like about it, and I've used through the years when I've been able to design things, is I've used a mind map as a way to organize my content. So I like this format, but if you like, some people like to put it in this kind of more vertical column position so that they can see, you know, where they're at. You can even highlight something like on the left to say you are here. And so this is one of the earliest tools I used to create the navigational pieces between modules of courses. So then I started thinking about, okay, so 7 tools. How many tools have I used? So I just started creating a list of all the tools I've used through the years off and on for creating training. Now, you have to understand something. My primary role is a facilitator. So I do neutral facilitation, classroom instruction as part of my job, and the time that I get to design is a much smaller portion of my job. There's 7 designers that's on my team, and they let me hang out with them, which is kind of nice. But my primary role I'm coming from is facilitation. So I'm not designing every day, but I started looking, and there's a lot of different tools that I've used to create training. Some that might even surprise you, like number 27, using Second Life. Mm-hmm. So now, you know, with Powtoons and some of those to generate avatars, actually, Second Life was a way you could do that even 5-6 years ago to create some visual 3D kind of videos because they had their own means to record that. Some of these tools are for manipulating images, some of them are manipulating video, some of them are overall tools. So that looks kind of boring, right? So I thought, all right, I need some way to kind of show you the same information in a more interesting way. So boom. One of the tools I will show you today. Sandy, maybe you can poll people, or just ask on the raised hands to
Sure.
say how many people have created a word cloud like this before.
Yay! Yeah. How many people have used the raise hand button? Click on the button that has the little green arrow. If you've used the, what do you call this again?
A word cloud?
A word cloud. Okay.
Some people call them a tag cloud.
Word cloud, tag cloud. I use Wordle. I think it's Wordle.net. What did you use to create this one?
This one was actually created in Wordle.
Okay, Wordle. Is it Wordle.net? I think
You'll see in just a second.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, so it only looks like about 10 people out of our 67 have used this type of art. I think it's cool.
Yeah, but look how engaging this is. Now, here, if I was teaching, I might want to break this out. I might want to be able to make reference to the numbers. That's great. But if I just want to overall kind of show somebody, here's all these kind of tools, it really just kind of pops out at you as far as a way. It looks very fresh. Looks like, oh, this is really cool. And it's interesting, these tools, and we're going to take a look at two of them in just a second here. But before I do that, I thought about all these tools, and I thought, you know, I have used all these tools, but honestly, what do I consistently use? So here, you know, I don't even think I put in Final. Did I put in Final Cut? I might have put in. So a few years ago, I mentioned it in the video that in the presentation I did in Austin that we convinced our management to invest in some Mac laptop Pros, MacBook Pros, and we also bought Final Cut Pro, which is a high-end video editing software. In fact, they edited a little movie called Lord of the Rings on it, so it's really powerful and has all this horsepower. But it's interesting to find a lot of times I really just fall back to a couple of simpler tools. And so I decided, you know, this is my go-to palette. When I really look at all these different tools, 80% of the time I'm creating something, whether it's a presentation, whether it's a video, whether it's training, even audio. It really kind of comes down to this. Now, I threw Word in there or notes or, you know, that could, I don't necessarily mean Word, Microsoft Word. It could be TextPad. It could be Notepad. It could be Notes. It could be a lot of things. I've experimented with Dragon, Naturally Speaking, to dictate. I have an app on my phone called Dropbox that works with Dropbox, so I can make audio notes when I'm driving. It automatically uploads them to my Dropbox, which is kind of nice. Get those transcribed. So, you know, so you always have to still generate words, but then mind maps. I tend to go to mind maps. Snagit. Maybe a show of hands, how many people use Snagit?
Raise your hand if you use Snagit. Oh, wow, a lot more people use Snagit. I would say about half the participants today have raised their hands.
Absolutely. That's a tool. I don't see how anybody can do without that tool. Once you get used to using that, it's great. So you might be on a webinar like here where they don't have playbacks and stuff. You can set it up so you can screen captures right away. Just some inside dirt there.
I've done that.
I'm used to those. Yeah. You know, it freezes the screen. You capture it right away. You want to manipulate something, and it's interesting. Their editor is a really good editor. So whereas I might have used Photoshop in the past, or GIMP is another one on the Mac that I've used, a lot of what I need to do, I can do right in the editor. It has some extra features, some of which I use to present things, create things today. Mm-hmm. We'll take a look at Prezi a little bit as a way of presenting. So this left half is kind of, we're going to see how I create content, and then around the right-hand side of this graph is Camtasia as my editor of choice and assembly of choice for video content. Certainly can't get away from PowerPoint, but Keynote, I want to highlight Keynote today and a few features that maybe you not thought about with Keynote. That's kind of PowerPoint for the Mac, but I like it better. And then maybe one more question for folks in general, just to kind of get a feel for who I have on the webinar today, is how many people are using Storyline or Captivate, a tool like that, to create e-learning?
Storyline or Captivate? Raise your hand. Okay, this is interesting. I would say about 15 or so out of our attendees, maybe a little less than a quarter.
Okay. Okay, so then I'm glad that I'm choosing that about half my presentation is going to be on real low-tech kind of approaches, because it sounds like there'll be more people who can access kind of these low-tech kind of things. Mm-hmm. So here's an example. I wasn't sure. I was thinking about copyright. I was thinking about those issues. And so when I started out, I grabbed this little image. I did a search for royalty-free, found this little
Mm-hmm.
palette, and decided to just kind of build my slide around that. So there was an example of what I was doing. I started thinking about my creation process from this palette of tools. And I realized, wow, we don't have enough time for me to go through all the stuff I do. But these were a couple of process flows that I've created and used, one for audio and then one for video. And maybe I could try to pull some of this stuff together, a nice PDF to send folks after the webinar. Once we can do that, right, Sandy?
Oh yeah,
Follow up with
absolutely.
folks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that may be my my early Christmas gift to folks.
Yay!
So I realize that's probably too much. So I thought, how can I really simplify this? So when I look at the creation process, it really kind of comes down to these three things. I've got some raw content that I'm either sourcing, like the little rock guy that you saw, the little bubble guy that you saw, got that from Shutterstock, or it's about creating content. And from that content, I'm going to go into some kind of tool that's going to allow me to modify, manipulate, edit that source content, or combine it in new ways. And then really that third piece is a tool or environment for finalizing the content. So that could be a navigational flow. It could be the particular format. Is it going to be online streaming learning class? Is it going to be video? Would it be audio? Would it be a PDF? All of those kind of come down to these finalizing tools. So if you look at my preferred tools, they're roughly in the order of what purpose those tools serve. So if I look at generating raw content, Word, Snagit, Mind Maps, that kind of serves as my base content. Moving into Prezi and PowerPoint and Keynote, those tend to be environments where I'm going to be manipulating, modifying, combining them into different pieces. And then finally, if I'm assembling a video, I'm going to use Camtasia to do that, or if it's going to be in an e-learning format, I'm going to use Storyline, or something I'll end our session on, a tool called Zebra Zaps, which I think is really cool. And so that'll be kind of it's been out for quite a while, but very few people seem to know about it. So just kind of giving you a little context of where things are at. So back to what I said before, I have a digital audio recording studio in my basement, have for about 20 years. I've recorded 5 full-length music CDs, over 100 spoken word CDs. And it's always interesting to me because, you get these new tools for creating audio and creating music. And they always give you these sample files. And these sample files are just pristine. They're wonderful. They put it together. And so it's really enticing because when you see the demo, you're like, oh, I'm going to be able to create beautiful music just like that. And then the first time you're in there, it's like, how come mine doesn't sound like that? Well, because you didn't do all the things they did to prepare good content. So some of us, if you can afford it, starting out with some great image, great photography, great audio sound beds to begin with is a much better place. So in our case, in my department, we have a subscription to Shutterstock. We have an annual subscription. It's about $11,000, but we get to download 30 images a day that we can use however we want. So this is not for people who don't have any money. However, just as a quick tip, search.creativecommons.org is a search engine that will show you different content that's follows the Creative Commons branding. So there's several different levels, but there's different images and stuff that you can use. Sometimes it has to be for non-commercial purposes. Sometimes people allow you to take their image or whatever that piece of content is, edit it, republish it. So just a couple options to think about when you're going to look for content. So let's talk a little bit about creating content. So the first one is back to our mind maps. I like mind maps as a way to create content. So here's an example. I found this. The attribution is at the bottom. It's on Flickr. It's a little busy, but I did have the rights to use it, so I'm using it. But certainly I have taken and created mind maps like this by hand, scanned them in, and then allowed that to be my navigational element. And what's nice about these hand-drawn ones, besides the fact that they're almost like works of art by themselves, is it's engaging because it's not mechanically driven. So that's one approach. Or if you have mind mapping software, here's an example of where I've used, I created a mind map around, now it was on educating people around how they take in and look at opportunities. And this just happens to be my personal opportunity matrix. So when I was working, before I was with Allstate, I was independent for about 3 years, my own business. I had to look at what kind of work I wanted to take in, so that's why I have such things as over on the left, the client's too desperate, they want it too fast, there's no way I can deliver it, I'm going to stay away from that. But just working from clockwise, I'd go through what's the time frame, how long, is this difficult, do I have the skills needed, is there a big learning curve, even down to the return on investment. And you might see my little acronym there, Itsuwitsumatsu, or whatever it's called there, the ITWIWTSMTO. People always ask me what that is. Is this what I really want to spend my time on? So anyway, just a fun visual way. But what's nice about a mind map like this is now I can set the entire context of the process that I would follow doing an opportunity. And you can do the same thing with your course or segment. Or, as Mary Gray was talking about, a nice little way, on our webinar last month, these learning snacks. You have a nice self-contained visual that you can then walk through. In fact, I've seen a lot of marketers, online marketing folks, who they're training, they'll just train around a mind map. They'll literally just walk through, describe everything that they need to describe for you to learn something, and all they have on the screen is they're just kind of moving through the mind map. So something simple that everybody can do, just kind of a fun visual way. The icons there are part of the tool. You could change them, do different things. There are lots of different mind mapping software. I use the top one, MindJet, but there's ones that run on Linux, Mac. They'll run on Mac OS, Android. So just threw a few out there, the more popular ones. So moving on from mind mapping, so we were just talking about word clouds. So what do you think of this word cloud, Sandy?
I like it. Word.
You like it?
I think that came out in what, 19, the little bubble talking thing?
Yeah, so that comes right out of PowerPoint, and I thought I'll just slap some words in there. And I thought, well, if that's all you have, okay, you could do that, but is it exciting? No, it's not very exciting. So let me show you a couple tools that are a little more interesting. So when I was looking for some new ones, so again, you saw the one that I did for the tools that I've used. I found an application called Tagxedo, and it's really cool. So I'm looking at this going, is it kind of a donut that someone's bitten into? And I stared at it a little longer, and I realized, wait, that looks like South America. And so I thought, that's interesting. And so if you click on the Shapes button, I just highlighted it with the yellow oval there, and I'm just kind of simulating some of this stuff right now, it pulls up all kinds of shapes that you can put your word cloud into. So you could have a duck, a rooster, a crown, or as you can maybe just slightly see it highlighted, the country of, or the continent of South America, and just to the left is the one that was there. So if I click on the South America one and I regenerate, I can take those same words.
Check it out.
And I thought, it's like, hey, so maybe you have a need, and you can look through the shapes and find different ones. So I thought, this thing really rocks. It's cool. I thought, okay, well, what else can I do with it? So changing some fonts. Here's one shaped like a cloud. I used the same keywords I used to generate that last Wordle cloud. I put into here, and I thought, that's kind of interesting, different kind of fonts. And I thought, play with it a little more and realized, ooh, I can have the black background and have it shaped like a ball. And I thought, wow, this is really cool, and I was super excited. And then I thought, you know what? I better check out what the terms of service are for this tool. Because if you're independent and you got a lot of flexibility, but if you work for a large company like I do with Allstate, we're very compliance conscious, regulations, and probably like a lot of other insurance company, legal kind of drives things, and they get real finicky about certain things. So I thought, you know what, I'll do my due diligence, and so here's my first caution. I was kind of sad to find out that once I got down to paragraph 3 on the artwork license, it says all images and artworks generated by Tagxedo and their derivatives are considered intellectual property of Tagxedo. And they're licensing back to you under this kind of Creative Commons license. And if you want to use it for commercial purposes, which even training for a company, for us as insurance companies would be considered commercial, then I can't use it. So I could show it to you. I thought it was pretty cool, but Then when I kind of double-checked last minute, I was like, uh-oh, that's not going to work for us. So back to what we were talking about just a few minutes ago was Wordle. Now, I was excited. I was practicing yesterday. I had it working. And then today, it's not working. One of the things that Allstate's very conscious about, it does not want to be the next Target, the next Home Depot. It does not want to be the next data breach. And so we've even tightened our controls stronger. So some access and administrative rights that I had even 2 weeks ago, I no longer have. So unfortunately, I had to do some screenshots on my Mac and kind of put them in here to show you. But when you go to Wordle, so it is wordle.net, you can click the Create button. So using the same words, so this is like an example of what it generated, but pop it in here. How it works is you click the Create button. You can do two things. You can either submit a URL. So it's interesting. I've used this tool for several years, but not to generate these word clouds for training so much. I volunteer for a job seeker ministry that we have. And a lot of people use Wordle to put all the words of a job description in, and it'll actually add up and tell you all the numbers of words that's used, so they can use to see if their resume matches the job description. So you can do, you can put any kind of source in there, or you can just cut and paste. So in this case, cut and paste Snagit, Camtasia, and you hit the Go button, and that's what happens to me. Might happen to you, because I can't reload the Java piece that it needs. The nice thing about Wordle, though, is because it's based on Java, it doesn't store anything. So when you create it, you just do you do a screen capture of whatever it generates. And you'll notice at the bottom left-hand side, besides print, it says randomized. And it'll go through and it'll randomly do its different patterns, different colors, different fonts. And so just kind of keep clicking the random button. This is all the different ways it just kind of kept regenerating it in different ways. So very quickly you can come up with something, you look and say, oh, I like that. Then use that one, cut and paste it, you're ready to go. If you're not, hit the button again and go, oh, that's kind of interesting. So it's nice because you can keep regenerating this until you find something that for you makes sense. And just the last thing is the size of the words is scaled by how many times that word is found. So if you want Camtasia in this case to show up many times, I would put it in 4 or 5 times.
So
versus the other ones that are smaller, we're only listed one.
If you had an Excel spreadsheet of data, you can copy and paste the data into the Wordle box, and then it automatically will count the number of times a certain word appears, and the more it's in that spreadsheet, the bigger the word gets. Right? Yep. Okay.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. So you can have some fun playing with it, controlling it. I chose this format because I tend to use Camtasia the most, Snagit, a bit of Prezi, Mind Maps. So I kind of scaled it so you get more intelligence out of that same one. So again, there's different ways. There was my original one that I had. And then just this is one of the ways I've used it. So for the resume training section that I did in presentation for this job seeker organization that I volunteer for twice a month, just a fun way to kind of spruce up the training. Kind of make it look cool. All right, and here's the good news. This is from their terms of service. May I use my Wordles for? And it just says yes. The images you create in Wordle are yours to use in any way you choose. You may print T-shirts, business cards, brochures. You have it. If you want to give credit to Wordle.net, feel free, but it's not required. So this one's great because I don't have to worry about attribution or use. It's mine to use as I wish. And none of the information is stored on their servers, which for a company like Allstate, that's a critical concern. Some of these tools, I wanted to look at some of the tools that Mary was mentioning last month. I thought, oh, I'd like to go do a deeper dive into those. Many of those don't comply with our legal requirements and our security, our data security requirements, because they're stored on their servers. So it can be an issue. But this is one where it's not a problem. So moving on to raw content, kind of moving into this edit space. Keynote. So Keynote on the Mac. Maybe a show of hands. How many people have used Keynote?
Raise your hand if you've used Keynote. Oh, wow. I've only got 3 people that have used it. Lisa, Matt, and Michelle, and Frank, 4.
So let me show you 2 things that I like about Keynote above PowerPoint. One, it's got cooler transitions, but so one of 2 things I've used Keynote a lot for. The first one is to manipulate photos, believe it or not. So back to my title slide. You see my little rock guy there? My little bubble guy rocking it out there for the slide there. Well, what you don't know, or didn't know, is that this is the original image. And if you look, you'll notice that there's a shading on the bottom of this image, but just gets cut off at the boundary edges of it. Well, sometimes you don't get to conveniently put that between two vertical lines. And so if I was to use that image and popped it into my title slide, it would look like that, which it just looks kind of cheesy, doesn't it? It just kind of feels like clip art, like, oh, you just kind of popped it in there. But there's a button that's inside Keynote called the Alpha Selector, which allows you to select any color to erase it essentially from the image on a slide. So we're going to be brave and try this. I'm going to go out to my YouTube channel, maybe, and here it is. Just to demonstrate. So can everybody see the video?
Yep.
So when I start it, what happens is it has a little selector tool, and you click and drag. It will dynamically grab a piece of the image and erase it, so you'll kind of see it. It's only about 30 seconds. So I click, you go, oops, and you could over-select. You kind of move it back and forth till you find out what you want, hit return, and it's progressively erasing. Oops, made a mistake there. Undo. Just kept grabbing these little pieces of color and shadow until most of it was gone. And then I could save the image. Oh. Sorry, that's a little auto play on YouTube's part. Whoa.
I think we got the point. I think one of the challenges for a lot of the people who work in the insurance industry, it is not a Mac world. And I was happy that Dawn weighed in. She said Adobe Illustrator has the similar tools as Keynote, and it's PC friendly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, one of the things that we're looking at for next year is to get the Adobe Creative Suite. That would give us a lot more functionality. But there are other tools, but for some that people have the Mac, and it's with iLife, you can get it for less than $50. So if you have a Mac at home or you have that option, it's a nice feature. But yes, there are other tools that do it. So thanks for that tip there. So just kind of walking through the slides because I wasn't sure whether we get the video. But so here's kind of the before and after. You know, I think the guy on the left just looks a lot more part of that image versus the guy on the right. Yeah, so that's one of the uses I use it for. And then I also have a short video here. We'll try this one, where the other part I like about Keynote is I can rehearse the presentation and hit the button, and it'll replay my presentation, including voiceover if I want to speak as I'm recording and rehearsing the progressions and all the transitions. But what's really nice about it is I can output that to a movie file. And so what's nice about that is it takes a little while to render, but it renders all the transitions very seamlessly and smoothly. So this is a video I can show you because I put it together for that same job seeker ministry. So it's 2 minutes long, so this is my only other video, but I'm going to play it for you.
Wow. So is there an audio track that goes with this?
There is. So I'm hearing it in my headset. Obviously, you guys aren't hearing it in yours.
No, I can hear the music in the background a little bit.
Yeah, I pulled my headset up.
It's kind of buffering a little bit in the GoToWebinar tool, but we get the point.
Yeah. So if we had a little more time, we would have piped in the music. It has this very dramatic music that the slides are timed to it. But this is an example of where just being inside of Keynote, using their transitions, just makes for a very, and this was a few years ago, so obviously our employment rates have dropped. The other numbers have not dropped, but it was just a way to, we were using it kind of as a promo video to get people to come. And so it's just one of those things that I like Keynote for. Now, there are other tools that allow you to do that, but that's another reason I like to use Keynote. So I'm looking at our time. How we doing? We're about quarter
about
two.
17 minutes, so get to the good stuff.
Okay. So
this is
what
all good stuff.
Yeah. So So I'm gonna just do kind of a just do real briefly then. Prezi is a tool. Again, tool that's been out there for a while, but it's I like it, and surprisingly, not many people have been using it as much. So let me go out to so probably the simplest thing to do is Prezi is a tool that kind of, instead of it just being a page turner like PowerPoint would be, or even Keynote, you have a palette, and you can arrange how you see images, the path that it takes, and so one I thought was kind of interesting, just quickly to show you, to get you a taste and a feel for Prezi, is one on the Khan Academy, right, the whole flipped classroom guy. So as we walk through it, so this is what's nice about this tool. You can either use it as a standalone presentation, some people will use Prezi just as their means of presenting versus PowerPoint. I've used it where I've used Camtasia, capture the screen, and then walk through the presentation to create a video. And they've really improved the tool. So you can move and twist, and you can embed YouTube videos, and it'll automatically play. I can queue up the next one. So it's just a lot more interesting.
I like that.
And, so walking through, people zooming in, another video, that one, zooming even close. So when you see some of these things, here's a tool that's not that expensive, and it can allow you to create a video in a way that's very engaging. Or if you're making presentations without fixing it in video and you just want to do it live, it's also a great tool for presentation. So
raise your hand if you use Prezi, or yeah. Anyone? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 6 people use Prezi. Check it out. A lot of it, you just have to be adventurous. A lot of enhancing your visual authoring skills is you just have to go forth and learn some of these tools and not be scared to, they're just so intuitive and so much easier to use and create things. The biggest challenge is in your mind thinking how you're going to present the visual part of it, the elements.
Yeah, and the good news is now there's templates, so I just grabbed one real quick for this presentation. So sites, visual authoring, tools to make your presentation rock. All I'm doing is cutting and pasting into these little blocks. It's already set up the navigation for me, So to your point, Sandy, you really just have to try it out. It's not hard. Don't be afraid. And there's different price points, so I'm currently using the one that's like $5 a month. You can get Pro, which there's all kinds of features and stuff, but for fairly inexpensively. What's nice about getting the Pro version is that you can download these things off the server onto your machine, so you can edit them there, which also is good for security purposes. So another thing to think about. So finally, moving into the last couple things, I'm not going to spend any time on it because most people, I find, have had exposure to this, but my two big tools that I use is Camtasia. So there's just kind of a screenshot of the fact that you can have multiple tracks. I can bring a video in. You can see there's a little red arrow there. Well, that's a dynamic element that you can control, and so you can have it so it looks like someone's drawing the arrow, like the old football, diagrams on the screen and circles and stuff. So I'll use Camtasia to not only edit my video, but to enhance it by having these kind of call-outs, bubbles, the little thirds across the bottom. Sandy Masters, intergalactic host of site webinars. And scroll across the bottom like documentary style. So that's both Snagit and Camtasia are part of TechSmith. Great tool. Run you about $250. Could be a little cheaper now. I'm not sure. But a great tool. It's continued to grow. And again, I have very high-powered video editing software, and 90% of the time I'm just in Camtasia. And the other part is, and you could spend weeks on this, is we use Storyline, Articulate Storyline. And so I just kind of put a little image on the right. What's nice about Storyline is it gives you the ability to branch and nest and have all kinds of different ways to navigate your content, do different things, a lot of different scripting, all kinds of ways that you can manipulate your content to make it a more engaging piece. But the last thing I want to just end on was a tool that very few people seem to know about, but I think is a fabulous tool. It's not for the faint of heart. I wouldn't start here. But I just want to whet your appetite of what can be done. It's by Michael Allen, the guy who did Authorware and all the Macromedia stuff back in the day. Or well, he sold his company to Macromedia. Went in retirement. A few years ago, he just felt like we don't have any good tools for e-learning, and so he created this application called Zebra Zaps. So it has. This is just a screenshot of some of my projects. There's all kinds of gadgets that you can use to build this stuff. But let me show you an application I put together. So one of the things that I teach is a personality assessment workshop called Insights. It's like Myers-Briggs, but instead of using ENTJ, EIO, they use 4 colors. And these 4 colors are represented on the screen right now. So red is on the left and right, it's introvert, extrovert, top and bottom is thinking and feeling, if you know about these things. So one of the things that we have in the class workshop is we have a bunch of cards with different colors on them with phrases. And so they would collect these cards to maybe get an indication of what color they prefer. And so I thought, how can I do something like this in a virtual classroom where I don't have the ability to run a card game virtually? So I created this so at the bottom here I have these cards. So value to high ideals. I think that's green energy. Respectful to others' needs. That sounds like green energy too. Brings boundless energy to the situation. I think that's yellow energy. Dynamic negotiator. Let's say that's red. Conceptual and intellectual performer. Maybe that's blue. Can I facilitate interpersonal conflict between others? Participative involvement with team players. Okay.
So now, would you ask?
For some reason,
Would you ask the virtual audience to help you place those cards? Is that what you're?
Yeah. So this was more. I'm thinking about how we could maybe have a self-contained section, but that was more interactive. So this is really a simulation. Maybe that's a better way to think about it. And for whatever reasons, my little button here, when I started placing this, my drag and drop window should have gone away, but for some reason it didn't. So that could be because I'm at full screen. So here's where I guessed correctly. Here's where I didn't guess correctly.
Oh.
So I might have to say, well, did I get it right this time? No, I did not. Did I get it right this time? No, I did not. Did I get it right this time? Yes, I did.
Values, truth, and high ideals.
Yeah. So what's interesting, and we'll because I do want to leave a few minutes for question and answers. I'll go back to my presentation without going in the environment. But what's totally different about this tool versus Storyline is that it's all wireframe based. You have all these different, so this little thing I just showed you, each card has a number of little widgets that I'm using to do programming. So I don't have to do any programming. I just have to know some basic logic, and I can connect things through dragging and dropping wires. So what's at the top of the screen is some truth tables. What's over to the left are little states that says was the card checked or selected. There's some on the bottom you see which color corresponds to what. And when I hit the reveal, it triggers this truth table, and then it tells me, did I get the right card or did I not get the right card? So what's nice about it, once I got 8 cards working, because I just chose to go with 8 cards, I just duplicated it over and over again. And so here's all my cards. Here's all of these things. And if I was to turn all the wires on, you can see there's a lot of wires, which looks totally overwhelming, but it's really just a little bit of functionality that I've pasted over and over again to make a very compelling and engaging game without the overhead of custom development, and something that would be much more difficult to do in a storyline. So I just throw it out there. There's lots of things. I would go to YouTube, look for Zebra Zaps, and you'll see a lot of very interesting things that you can do with the tool. So just thought I would share that with everybody. There's different licenses. I do the $8 a month, but the high-end one you can actually export to your own standalone apps. You can connect in LMSs. You can do a lot of different things. So with that, just kind of giving a wrap-up of where we've been, we looked at a little bit of my content creation process, some tools used to create that, a few tips and cautions in between, showed you my palette of go-to tools. We kind of walked through the fact that you start with raw content, you edit it, you finalize it, and we showed you a couple video samples of that. So with that, questions.
Okay, and we've got some questions already rolling in, and raise your hand if you'd like to be unmuted. I see Nelson has his hand raised, and Michelle has her hand raised. So let me just address a couple of the questions that came in the queue, and then I'll unmute Michelle and Nelson to address their questions as well. David asks, okay, so you're going to have to think back to when you started doing e-learning. What would be a good program to start with for e-learning?
Ooh. That's a tough one to answer. I know that Storyline for me is a pretty intuitive tool. A current one that has good horsepower. The problem, if I look back in the past, all those tools are gone now. So Storyline would be a good one. Captivate's a little bit more complex, and certainly the Zebra Zap would not be for the faint of heart. So. But maybe there's others. Maybe people can chat in the window and answer that question.
Yeah. If there's others that you would like to share, let us know. Okay, real quickly,
Absolutely.
I'll address Alicia's question. How can you implement these ideas into modules or PowerPoints that already exist without overdoing it?
So there's always a balance. I guess you could have too much stuff where it gets a little crazy. So yeah, if you look at my presentation today, it probably drove some of you crazy because you're like, wait, you're not using consistent fonts, you're not using a consistent approach, because I just wanted to paint a palette of things for you. So this would probably not be an example of what I would just plug right into a piece. But that's not an easy answer. I guess the thing I'm finding is less is more. What's the minimal piece of information that you want to convey? And what's the most effective way to do that? Is it a visual? Is it a diagram? And sometimes it can be the written word.
Mm-hmm.
Let me know if that didn't answer the question for you.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Okay, so Nelson, I'm going to unmute your line. Hopefully you have a headset on. Nelson, are you with us this morning?
Yes.
Great, thanks. What's your question?
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah.
I just had a question for Steve. Do you use any polling tools like Kahoot in your trainings? And if so, which programs do you recommend?
So the only time we use polling, well, we do use polling within Storyline. Believe it or not, a lot of training is done through WebEx, so we use the polling just like Sandy's using polling for GoToWebinar. So within the tool, I find those very effective. I've also used some of those in live sessions. I've used the I'm drawing a blank as to the name of it, but they have the little paddles, little pucks.
There's Poll Everywhere.
Tied into your computer.
I think
that was the one.
Yeah, I think people use like Poll Everywhere. So you mentioned, Nelson, Kahoot. Is it C-A-H-O-O-T?
Yeah, K-A-H-O-O-T.
Oh, K-A-H.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one.
Oh, yeah, it's really great. I recommend everyone give it a try. I think the website is getkahoot.com.
Cool.
And I use that for my in-house training. Pretty cool.
And this would be live, right?
Excellent. Hey, Sandy, I think.
Yep.
So, Sandy, I think you got a future speaker there.
Yay!
Talk about technology
Absolutely.
for that.
Yeah. I know a lot of people that I've heard use Poll Everywhere, and there's probably a half dozen out there that are available, but I
Yeah.
haven't heard of Kahoot, so we'll put that in here, the website. Thank you, Nelson.
Ah, thank you very much.
Great question. Okay, Michelle, I'm going to unmute your line. How are you, Michelle?
I'm good, Sandy. How are you?
Good, good.
Steve, I had a question. One of our biggest challenges is getting our subject matter experts to pare down all of their, I guess, guidelines and coverage, and they're very attached to their words. So I was wondering if you had any similar experiences that you could share with us as to how you deal with those challenges in your world.
Oh, you are describing the true role of the instructional designer. To take all of that massive information. I used to be with Motorola, engineers who love to share. They want to share everything. You just have to keep working on them. Sometimes you do the A/B of showing them like what it looks like with all their content and information versus your streamlined presentation, or getting them to really think through it. It's not, I wish there was a magic bullet on that one. I'd love to hear from some others what their experiences have been. I know for me, it's showing them, how simpler is better, and just reminding them. The book Made to Stick talks about the idea of the curse of expertise. You forget that people don't have your expertise, and you really have to have the beginner's mind. So even sharing that with them to help them understand, saying, all this stuff, but the person who's seeing this for the first time or doesn't have your skills, you need to really think about this from a beginner's mind. And that's where I find a good instructional designer will help a SME or subject matter expert do that. That help?
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Michelle. Well, we are at the end of our time, and Steve, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to share with people some ideas on where they can explore more. We know that site webinars do not answer all questions, and they're not meant to make you an expert, but it's supposed to inspire you to want to research more on this. So raise your hand if you were inspired today. I know I was. Thank you, Monica, Patty, Michelle, Lisa, Heath, Jan, Jim, David, Dina, Alicia, Abby, Svetlana, Stanley, Ryan. You guys are great. Thank you so much, and thank you, Steve. We are at the end of our time. I'll go ahead and stop the recording.